Thank you for joining us today. My name is Bill Baker. I'm with Firestorm, and we're pleased to have you joining us for this webinar today that is part of the Crisis Coach series that is presented by the Rochester Business Alliance and the Association of Contingency Planners, the Eastern Great Lakes chapter. Pleased to having you with us. Today we're talking about creating an intelligence network. This is part one of two, and our next presentation next month will be talking about virtual investigation. Please become our friend on Facebook. We're known as Firestorm Solutions. On Twitter, we're called Firestorm Soul. There is a hashtag. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage risks and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communication, crisis, public relations, and consequence management. Please keep in mind the presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion, and our work product should be read in conjunction with advice from your organization's personal counsel. In addition, do not interpret this information as legal advice or legal opinion. We're delighted to have John Luce, Chip Dawson with us today. Chip is with the Rochester Business Alliance. John Luce is with the Association of Contingency Planners. Our presenter today is Karen Masullo. She's the Chief Intelligence Officer of Firestorm. Chip, over to you, please.
Thank you, Bill, and good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to the seventh webinar in the 2015 series of the Crisis Coach. The Rochester Business Alliance is pleased to continue our partnership with Firestorm and our friends at the Eastern Great Lakes chapter of the Association of Contingency Planners to bring you, our members, this important 45-minute discussion by Firestorm's Chief Intelligence Officer, Karen Masullo. Today, Karen will cover, as Bill has said, part one of creating an intelligence network. Now, I admit to being a dinosaur. I remember the days of the manual typewriter, the party line telephone, and radio with vacuum tubes. In my Navy days, we still communicated ship to ship with signal flags and flashing light. Sailor to sailor information was called scuttlebutt, just as civilian worker communications took place at the water cooler. I don't own a smartphone, and I'd much rather have a conversation over coffee with a friend than post my thoughts on social media. That said, I pride myself on being a competent investigator, and I seek out credible sources to help me sharpen my understanding of the information culture. When I see the details of today's most challenging events, I'm always left with the question, how could they not have known? It seems there's always a tell or a tip that would allow successful intervention. That's where Karen comes in. With state-of-the-art knowledge and access to high-end technology, she's going to spend the next 45 minutes showing us how we can always see the tip or the tell and ensure that we do know well in advance. Karen will be along in a moment, but first, a few words from John Luce on behalf of the Association of Contingency Planners. Here's John.
Thank you very much, Chip. Appreciate the introduction, and as well, Bill Baker, thank you for inviting. And I'm representing Eastern Great Lakes Association of Contingency Planners, and we're happy to partner with the Rochester Business Alliance and especially Firestorm, and appreciate the opportunities to partnership with you as well as collaborate on some of these webinars. Very interesting stuff. Related to the ACP, as you can see in front of you, our mission is basically that. The folks that are part of this membership, which is a national organization, are dedicated to being professionals and, as it says, protecting their lives, safeguarding businesses, and fostering community resiliency. After all, that's with the things going on in today's world, that's becoming more and more important every single day. And one of our big things I would look for is with any organization is the value to our members. And as you can read there in the paragraphs, we foster the growth of the business continuity in industry through its network. So with that, we have many folks in our chapter. We generally around 50 folks, and we're in the northeastern part, or actually northwestern part of New York State, covering Rochester, Buffalo, and Syracuse. And our folks represent various industries, whether it is the banking or financial in general, IT, healthcare, academia, universities, things like that, as well as some consultants and folks with the insurance and utilities, as well as the municipalities. Together, we represent a large number of, obviously, industries that together working together and collaborating with ourselves and bringing others into the fold helps this community to become resilient as well as ourselves, whether it's personally at home as well as the places that we work. The next slide does show, this is our website. Up on the top right, we do have the link there, the URL, for you to jot down, as well as you can go to just type in Association of Contingency Planners from Google or anyplace else, and you'll be able to find all the chapters. We invite you to join our chapter, to check us out, to join ACP National if you're not local to the upstate New York area. We're more than happy to have you in there. And with that, Chip, you had mentioned things that we don't know in this presentation. With the speed, the lightning speed of everything happening today, it's so easy to find things that we don't know what we don't know because it's changing so rapidly. So I think moving along, Karen's going to provide us a lot of insight into how we can actually tackle some of those things and be more successful. And with that, Karen, it's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Chip, I have decided that you must write a blog article a week for me. I very much appreciated that introduction. And John, we're so happy to have you and the valuable work that the ACP does joining us for this series of sessions. So, folks, thank you for being on today. We're going to talk a little bit about the virtual world and how to create an intelligence network that doesn't just have to do with social media, but certainly is a combination of growing social media threat and traditional media. And how do you know what you don't know? When we look at generally what we do know, it's pretty simple to define. I do know how to investigate issues on social media. I know what I don't know. I don't know how to speak Chinese, but what I don't know is what I don't know. And so that's what we're going to look at today, is how do you start opening your eyes to not only what you don't know, but knowing that you don't know it. And Firestorm has identified 5 common failures in a crisis. And the first is the failure to control critical supply chains. Train employees for both work and home. What we're going to talk about today, which is the number 3 risk, to identify and monitor all threats and risks, and to conduct exercises, update plans, and develop crisis communication plans. So let's look a little bit more closely at this. You know, certain incidents we can prepare for. We get warnings. We know about them. Weather is a big one. We have all kinds of weather radar and national and local entities to let us know there's a problem. We can get alerts on our smart devices. We can also go out and look at the sky. So we have a lot of data that we can bring together to help us prepare. But other incidents may have no warning at all, or very subtle warning signs that go unnoticed. You know, in 80% of the cases of violence in the workplace or incidences of surprise or mass violence, we find that 80%, in 80% of those cases, someone else knew that something was going to happen. And in 60%, 67% of those cases, 2 or more people knew. But we avoid looking at or hearing or acting upon those subtle signs. And as indeed was the case in Charleston, I use that as an example because I live in Charleston. It has been a shock to our community. And indeed, the shooter did tell people. As a matter of fact, they hid the gun from him and then gave it back. So what we want to do is look at what some of those subtle signals can be, because as you're learning about what's happening, we know in a crisis most of the information you learn is wrong. And learning should not happen in crisis or panic mode. It's not fair to your employees. It's not fair to you, to your community, to have to learn in panic mode. So following the predict, plan, perform methodology of Firestorm, we want you in the predict phase to have the tools and the expertise set up or at your disposal so that we can help you avoid, when a crisis occurs, having to learn in panic mode. I want to take just a moment to take a very quick look at emerging technologies. The reason I want to do this is because it is critically important that the experts and the tools you use are constantly evolving and state-of-the-art. Firestorm has worked very hard over the past 4 years to select not only state-of-the-art tools, but to assure that those tools are constantly expanding their reach and their ability to aggregate all social mentions into one place. So we're going to look very quickly at some emerging technologies that you may not have heard of. And once a month, it's not a bad idea for you to look and see, I wonder what else is out there that could pose a threat to my business. So Destruct is something that's just come out of the gate. Destruct says you can share any message on Twitter, on Facebook, any place else. And if you tell Destruct, destroy all of my messages all over on my social media accounts and any place else I've posted, they will be gone. Well, and that's really a false sense of security, because we've seen with Snapchat and others that those truly aren't destructed, and nothing is going to avoid someone taking a screen capture of whatever it is you posted or shared. So a lot of people, maybe your employees, will use this and think, oh, everything's cool, I can just hit this button, but that's not true. Yo started in 2014, and it was a very simple concept. If you wanted to send somebody a yo, how you doing, it would send a yo to their phone. Now it's expanded into video, it's expanded into images and general publishers of content, and it's growing a pretty good audience, and just received an awful lot of seed money. So that's something to keep your eye on, so that when people, as they talk about Twitter today, might be talking about yo tomorrow. Culture Sphere. Culture Sphere builds itself as the world's social sharing platform for employee-inspired media, internal to your culture. Well, again, there's caution there, because suddenly your employees are posting things internally, and they feel like, oh, this is just internal to our group, it's secure, I don't have to worry. Is that true? And well, no, it's not. Again, I can take a screen capture. I can share it out all over. When Twitter first came out of the gate, some senior-level CEOs of very large companies used its direct or private message functioning, thinking it was private. Well, it's private to the person, but that doesn't mean it can't be shared all over the web to stay forever. So, I always think, it's neat that they're coming up with new tools to make business more engaged and more culturally active, but we need to use a sense of caution when we look at some of these new tools. Hyper is really growing in popularity, and it's being used being promoted in Think Progress, Huffington Post. So I think we're going to see a lot of growth, a lot of money in marketing going forward this. But you can just type in a phone number there and text someone a link. Well, isn't that a nightmare for your IT folks who are trying to teach people not to click on random links? And, if you have people working from smart devices where sensitive information still lies, even if I access it on my phone, am I calling a malicious number? Am I giving the rights to log in via a phone number to something that can drop malicious code onto my smart device and compromise my businesses and my company's data? So we really have to educate our employees when they see something shiny and new like Hyper or some of these other tools, that they don't immediately adopt it and put your company and your information at risk, especially in a bring your own device situation. Here are just some other shots. Shots like Snapchat, take pictures, send them real time, it destroys, no it doesn't. Meerkat, Periscope, live streaming. Now there's one that combines all of them, which the other tools do as well. So everybody wants the next great best thing, and I don't know that any of these are or are not. They're just things to keep your eye on. But here's one I specifically wanted to mention. A lot of us in business, we not only have children that are school age and active on social media, you may also be a part of your parent-teacher organization. You may be a coach for softball or volleyball or something within the school system, or you may be a member of a school system. And this is one I specifically wanted to mention because there are lots of risks in this application called YouNow. YouNow allows anyone to live stream. I could use YouNow right now, give you the link, and you would see me sitting here talking, live streaming to you. You could talk to me directly. What you would do is type chat commands into a chat area, and hundreds of people might be watching at any given time. This particular young man, at the time I logged on, had 1,300 people watching him typing commands. Now, what we've seen is some of those commands are really distasteful, if not illegal. And it is a frightening thing that happens when you have a young girl or a young boy sitting in their room and someone starts daring them. And they know that the further they push the envelope, the more that 1.3 number goes up. Suddenly there's the sense of their 15 minutes of social fame, and it can be a very dangerous situation, not just for kids or for those of you with children, but imagine if one of your employees decides they're going to do a channel one night. You don't know what they're talking about. You don't know if there may be some sensitive data from your company lying around on a desk somewhere. Are they doing it from their office, God forbid? And there is just a myriad of challenges. So I just like to keep you informed of what's new and coming out there so that you can be aware of the potential risk to your organization. And in order to understand those risks and put all of these conversations into context, we have to monitor it. We build an intelligence network. Now, when I monitor to a lot of businesses, they'll say, oh, yeah, we monitor. We have Google Alerts set up on our company brand. Well, that's great. That's great if I'm talking about your brand. It's not to tell me everything about it, but every time somebody mentions your brand, you're going to get a little email that you're going to ignore because you're too busy. What you really need is a solid, focused intelligence network, a holistic approach with senior-level people who understand the conversation and how it happens. When we work with our clients, the first thing we do is sit down and set a baseline. What are, based on an assessment that we've done with the client for risks and threats in their business, specifically around social and traditional media, what is it that we're looking for? I worked with an engineering company, a company that did some really interesting work in a pretty remote part of the country. They had facilities, they had offices where people went and did marketing and those kinds of things. And then they had an off-site facility where 32 engineers sat and just engineered all day. All the smart people were in this one location. They were constantly being targeted by eco-terrorists. And we worked with them talking through leveraging social media to understand when these specific eco-terrorists were going to be targeting their facility. What hashtags, what words, what was the context they were using when they were talking about targeting this facility. And we do this in a combination of ways. So first, we start looking listening in a broad way to what conversations are about. Are they about violence? Are they about drugs? Whatever you define those risks to be. And we look at then, how are they discussing it? What language are they using? We might think, I am going to bring a gun to work. Well, that may not be how the person says it. That may not be how people speak in your geographic region, in your community. Just the slang and the syntax of what occurs in your area. And where do they discuss it? We have the ability to listen broadly and also focus in specific geographic locations. And you see on the right is of a search I was doing for a client, and they were on their property at any given time. There were all social media conversations going on. And then we look at the indicators that signal a risk or a threat to your business. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't really want someone smoking a marijuana cigarette at work in my facility. The liability would frighten the heck out of me. So if I saw this last night after we dropped Brenda off work, we went through her drive-through, got food, and I told her to hit the blunt. A blunt being a marijuana cigarette. I am shocked at how many times that happens, by the way, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment and see examples of it. So in this way, we can suddenly surface things to you that, by the way, have nothing to do with the name of your brand or your company. Next, once we've looked at the general conversations and threats that you feel are most important to identify in your business, we start looking at what is the norm. You know, every day there are about 100 mentions of your company or in your area geographically or a combination of those. And then suddenly we may see a spike or a deviation from the norm. And we're able to assign a risk profile to that. We know that the word fire and the word bomb and the word fire bomb together may be a very bad thing, especially, let's say, in Baltimore during a period of civil unrest. So this really gives us eyes and ears to be able to look and pinpoint and say, there's a challenge here, but what now is the context? Is it because suddenly there's a new song in your geographic area that says, let's go firebomb a store? Or is it because there's an actual real threat? One of these, put into context, is not a threat. I'm happy you brought your gun to work today. Good job. Had nothing to do with an actual threat. The next one, however, we identified as something that looked like somebody was escalating. They were having some challenges, and someone needed to be alerted about that. So that is the next thing we do. Once we identify deviations, we start putting it into context. Now, given all of this, and once this session is over today, there's going to be a brief available, and the brief will include this page because I'm not going to read it to you. There'll also be a copy of the webinar on our YouTube channel, and you'll receive a link to that as well. But you have to remember when you're setting up your social media policies and procedures, and we'd love to help you do that, that there are conversations that certainly are protected. There are off-duty conduct laws, protections for political views, protections for whistleblowers, prohibitions on retaliation, and there are protections for concerted activity. The National Labor Relations Act and similar laws will always protect an employee's right to communicate about wage issues, poor benefits, a difficult manager, long work hours, etc. They are allowed to do that on social media, and you are not allowed to retaliate. So we're going to help you with that as well. We're going to help you look at real threats, identify behaviors, and also let you know what behaviors are protected. But, you know, people are still going to say really dumb things. And this is an interesting example of on both sides some dumb things happened. This was a young girl, Sella. Ooh, I start this blankety-blank job tomorrow. Thumbs down. By the way, those are called emojis, and we're going to talk about those in a second. You can notice she posted that on February 6th. Very shortly thereafter, on February 7th, the guy who hired her, who owned a little pizza shop, said, no, you don't start that expletive job today. I just fired you. Good luck with your no money, no job, no life. Now, there are a lot of things that happened here that aren't good. Number one, the young lady posted what she posted. But number two, his response and the way he responded. He had no idea this would go as viral as it did. You know, both our President, Jim Satterfield, and our CEO, Harry Rulin, say something all the time, and that is, don't let your first response become the secondary crisis. And if you'll notice where it says retweets and favorites under Mr. Wapple's name, this, when I grabbed this, it was just starting to take off. At that point, it had 3,832 retweets and had been favorited. That's like a like on Facebook, 4,324 times. He had no idea his response would go as viral as it did. It was picked up by national media, and it wasn't necessarily the best approach. But he was a small business, and he felt like he had a right to respond. He ended up having to delete all his accounts. Fortunately, there was no deeper or longer challenge, but in some other situations, this could have been a very dangerous and costly mistake that he made. You know, our President Jim Satterfield likes to say all the time, social media is not random, it's targeted. If it weren't, it wouldn't be on social media. If there wasn't some reason you were putting out what you're putting out, you would think it to yourself. So what we work to do is to identify a target of conversation in this huge chaotic conversation universe that empowers you to and supports you in effective decision making when it matters most, in a crisis or before the crisis, which is what we prefer. That's what we refer to as critical decision support. And what you're looking at right now could have been taking my gun to work. It just happened to be he was taking his gun to school. I noticed this as I was doing some monitoring for a client, and it alarmed me. I see taking a gun to school quite often. I dig a little deeper as I can, and generally when I look at the person's page, I realize it's because they didn't get tickets to a concert they wanted to go to. It's just sort of comments. It's not a real threat. In this case, I saw a real threat. There was an escalating conversation that was ongoing. It was very violent and finally ended with, I'm taking my gun to school. Within 32 minutes, even though this is a completely anonymous account, it is public, within 32 minutes, based on the person's circle of influence, we were able to narrow down not only the city, but the school that we believed this person attended. We were able to contact the leadership in that school, and they were very sincerely grateful and did intervene. And shortly thereafter, this is what this person posted on their account. I think I'm going to be expelled from, e.g. was the school, because there was a bullet found in my locker and a clip found in my room. So there was some real activity going on here that we needed to address. And this can happen in the work situation, school situation, organizationally, etc. Now, where are people talking? It's really important that you know that. And when they know, and people, as we talked about earlier, 80% of the time someone knew something, 67% of the time two or more people knew something. And when they talk, when they know, they may put that on social media. Now, I wanted to give you an example of this because as a business, as a small business or a large business, we have to understand what audiences see what we're putting out there ourselves as well. And yesterday, again, Paula Deen had a problem. Supposedly, Paula Deen's social media manager posted a picture from 2011 where Paula Deen is dressed as Lucille Ball, and her son is in brown face doing Desi Arnaz. Paula Deen's people immediately deleted the post and came out with a statement that they had fired this terribly irresponsible social media manager, who I think was kind of the goat in this whole thing. But it really created a loud broadcast yesterday around this brand, and this brand had been on its way to repair, and to have something like this happen just sets it right back again, because words matter and intent matters, and what you may have intended when you wrote the post or put the publication out may not be what your audience gets from your message, and the crowd will tell you what they think mattered about it. What we're looking at right now is the daily exposure in a 10-minute period. I took this in a 10-minute period, 8.5 million views of Subway. And the key words in this conversation are raid, FBI, and child porn. These are never words we want associated with our brand, but you may not have control. So you need to know, what are people talking about? How are they talking about it? And how can I look at this quickly? You know, one of the things I think I'm so proud of bringing to the table for our clients is that instead of you having to have 26 different applications where you look at Twitter here and Facebook here and maybe Google News over here and YouTube over here, we bring everything together and aggregate it through one tool. And then we have experienced analysts who say, where are the risks? How do they line up with what our client is concerned with? And how do we alert our client quickly about the next steps that need to be taken? You know, so I tried to move as quickly as they could on this, and I'm not sure what the right thing to do was. What they've done is completely separate themselves from Jared Fogle. They have removed every mention of Jared Fogle from their website, all of his all of the philanthropy and charitable organizations, because they just simply don't know. And anytime you see raid, FBI, and child porn associated with your brand, you have to say, I must distance myself from this. It's a very complex situation. And sadly, it affects the local stores. Now, context matters. As I mentioned to you before, we also look at the context. We need to know, is this a song lyric? You know, am I going to do an alert and say, I think somebody's about to do something to your business, and it turns out to be a lyric from a song or a poem or quote from a book? But we also need to understand the language, the syntax, context, idiom in your particular geographic area. You know, there was a period in Kentucky where suddenly there was a mob of kids that would get together on social media and then for 2 hours just run a 5-mile rant across the city, destroying businesses, doing tons of vandalism and more violent acts. And this was taken from one of those situations, and this was the language. There were 100 of them deep in the streets, and they were about to flock or mob, and he had a Glock. So, you know, this allows us to look at a deeper level than just that high level, ooh, someone has a gun kind of an idea. The other thing you have to understand is once you're looking at things and you find something surfaces, is your policy in place? And is it enforceable? And we'd love to help you out, and we'll talk about a free assessment that we can give you at the end of this, a no-fee assessment. But you really need to know, is this policy that I just pulled off the web and copied someone else's enforceable for my business? This is someone in the military. In this particular instance, this person was mocking their own job. They were saying some disgustingly racist things through their social media account. And the one that was most interesting is she says, I'm a squared away soldier in real life. Good luck coming to my chain of command about some Twitter expletive. Promise they gonna laugh. Well, they didn't laugh. This was completely against their policy, and their policy is enforceable. Now, I don't know if anybody on the call is in the restaurant business or the restaurant industry, but this is what we had spoken about earlier. There's an awful lot of this going on, I guess, in the carryout windows of restaurants. And can you look right now through your social media analyst tools for more than marketing? Can you look at a geo level and tell me what's going on at your location at any given time? In this case, you would have seen that somebody was hitting a marijuana cigarette outside of the window. But not only that, this is a screen capture of a Vine. A Vine is a video. And that video was nice and quiet until this person, MTM, picked it up and reshared it. MTM had a very large following. And this Vine video went very viral, and it's blurred out in this photo, but that person's name tag and the store name is visible there. You don't have until tomorrow to respond. What's on social media today is already in your organization right now. And this one is the same thing, and they use the company's name right there. if I were that company, I certainly would want to know what was going on. What we're trying to do is help you identify behaviors of concern before it becomes a crisis in your organization. I'm going to use some workplace violence examples here because for me it's one of the most horrific things anyone can go through. I think if you just listen to the 911 calls from the FedEx challenge last year in Georgia, we can tell that some of those people were practiced and knew what to do, and they were still in crisis, and you can hear it in their voices, and you'd have to have no compassion at all to not understand that you never want your own employees to have to go through something like this, and it requires you to predict, plan, and perform. So we have to understand what might be behaviors of concern, and they differ from business to business, environment to environment, geography to geography. What we do is, with our analysts, we take the application of experience in combination with identified risks, threats, and vulnerabilities for your organization, and that helps provide us that roadmap to predictive and actionable intelligence. We have 3 examples here. I kind of want to bring my gun to work sometimes. Let every dirty blankety blank in here have it. That's a little frightening. I would look at that a little more deeply. I would look at the person's circle of influence. I would try to identify and alert someone that there's somebody where some tension is growing here. Someone who says, I was not feeling safe at work. This guy was bringing his revolver to work in his bag, and I was afraid he was going to shoot me. You want them to come to you, not on social media, but it's out here on social media for millions of people to see. Even if it doesn't mention your company, your business, your brand, this person is afraid. And we need to do something to address this behavior of concern before it turns into a workplace shooting. And someone else saying, so this guy told me he was going to kill me at work today. Well, that's great. We need to intervene there. We need to understand what's going on. So once we've listened to the broad conversation, we look a little bit more deeply. Number 1, Firestorm works with 2 state-of-the-art organizations to create one very powerful service. And we combine that with our intelligence analysts. But the reasons we chose the tools that we use is because they're constantly evolving. When I showed you those emerging tools earlier, you need to be aware of them, and we are. And we're working each day with the tools that we have to add new monitoring targets all the time. So emoji are important. This is how people talk. There's actually a restaurant in New York that just came out with an emoji-only menu. And if you don't know what an emoji is, you will not be able to get a cheeseburger in that restaurant. This came up as a risk when I was doing some searching. It said, Karen, we have a gun pointed at a police person in this post. We think this is a risk. And there don't have to be any words around this at all, just the emoji, and we'll pick it up. So what we do is we look at that on a very specific geographic view. And in this particular instance I'm going to show you, we were working with a client, and we had a specific location out of their, I don't know how many hundreds of locations across the country. And we started watching this person escalate in their conversation. And the first thing he said was in November, he said, I had to go off on a white guy today at work. And it kind of raised some flags for us. There was tension there. It may have been racial tension. And he was then saying when he gets off work, he has road rage. Where's all this rage coming from? He also says he's isolating. He barely talks to anyone anymore. Firestorm worked very hard last year and worked with members of our expert council and our senior leadership and created something called BERTHA, a behavioral risk threat assessment. And this assessment tool, this is almost a roadmap for that assessment tool. We start seeing disregard. We start seeing isolation. And then he starts saying, but I'm quietly making big moves, things to come. Even the people I once loved want me to fail and dead. They want me dead. Action speaks. Some days I'd be ready to go to war. Those are concerning statements, and on this particular day at work in an 8-hour shift, at the time I took this, there were 49 tweets, but actually it ended up being 56 in one day alone. And they kept escalating. Every day is stressful, stress going up, no respect for a liar, no conversation for a hater, no loyalty for a fake. And if you could see behind where the message is, and you see all of these little birdie icons, that is the employee walking around the building, and we could actually follow him as he walks through the building. If he said, I'm on my way to go punch someone in the nose, we would actually, if he was tweeting it, we'd be able to watch him do that. Now, what he says, as I mentioned, putting things in context, I have no beef with nobody, I'm chilling, might have a couple of blanks that don't like me. That is a common meme. We see that all the time. This isn't something original. He copied and pasted this. But next, he starts to say, these white folks beginning to bug the blank out of me for real, for real. And we realized that something may escalate, alerted the client. And shortly after this one, there was a threat of the use of a weapon. It went on from there. But in a very short period of time, we're able to look at and analyze that there is growing challenge happening. Now, one of the things, too, by having someone who is an experienced analyst do, is we can perceive, we don't perceive patterns or connections in random data that just has nothing to do with each other. We're not going to start telling you we see risks where there really are no risks. And if you can't think of who the seasoned intelligence analyst is in your organization, we really want you to think that through. So in summary, to create an intelligence network, you've got to listen to the large conversation, aggregate all of those mentions as they apply to your business, your culture, and your employees. And then we look more deeply. Again, these are all public posts. We're not looking at anything that is private, lockdown, or confidential. What we want to do is buy you time when it matters most. So follow best practices, have a great written plan, pardon me, and create a strong intelligence network. Because most executives are trained to make decisions based upon faulty data in a crisis. So your intelligence network is going to become critical to your decision making. And we want you to think through internal messaging. Pardon me, I got a tickle in my throat. Think through your own messaging and the timing of it. This one from Spotify, ahead of Mother's Day, how would you explain Spotify to your mom? Really upset people. People said, how would you explain ageism and sexism to a Spotify marketer? So don't presume to know something about your client base or your customer base or your potential customer base, and really think through what it is you're saying out loud. Don't come up with an idea like J.P. Morgan that did, and a day later have to say, oops, bad idea, back to the drawing board. We really want to help you predict a crisis through pre-crisis indicators. And we really want you to understand where your clients or people who need information go when you present information during a crisis to them. Your clients may go to your Twitter account, but in a crisis, they may all go to your website crashes. How will you know? Well, through our tools, we can help you define that. And so what we'd love to have you do next is you're invited to participate in a virtual exercise with your team via Firestorm in August. And if you just email us at webinars@firestorm.com, we can give you more information on that. We want you to align your plans to best practices and create your own intelligence network that follows the predict, plan, perform. Also, because of our wonderful relationship with Business Alliance and along with the ACP, we would also like to offer anyone on this call a no self-assessment and expert analysis. It's a $2,500 value. Again, you can go to firestorm.com, fill out our contact form, or you can just email us at webinars@firestorm.com and do mention RBA or the ACP. You can also download a brief on our website. We'll send you an email when that is ready. You can go to the front page of our website and see that information. And we would very much like to thank the Eastern Great Lakes chapter of the ACP and the Association of Contingency Planners, Rochester Business Alliance, and we hope that you found some value today in information on how to go about building an intelligence network. You can contact me personally via that email at webinars@firestorm.com or call us at 800-321-2219. Bill, I think that's about it for today, and I'd like to thank both John and Chip and our attendees for joining, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this information.
Thank you, Karen.
Everyone have a great day. This will now conclude our webinar.